Hi, hopefully you all wanted to see this talk. If not, you're probably in the wrong place. So, nice to see you. I'll start by introducing myself, as a little confession goes with this. So hi, I'm Lorna. You probably don't know me at all. I'm a PHP developer, not a cake PHP developer. Don't know any cake PHP. But I know quite a lot about PHP, so here's the deal. I'm going to tell you a bit about PHP, and over the next couple of days, I'm going to learn quite a lot about cake. So I think that's fair. Hopefully you think that's fair as well. So don't ask me any cake PHP questions, or I'll get someone else to answer them. I'm a PHP consultant, kind of. Like, really, I'm a developer. That's my background. That's where I'm happiest. But I'm now freelance, so I work with lots of different teams, helping them improve their applications, their processes. I do quite a lot of training. It's a real mixed bag. I'm quite local to here. I'm based in Leeds, just over the hills, about an hour away. I'm an author. My book, PHP Master, was published last year. I'm Lorna Jane on Twitter. Feel free to heckle me. I'm not obviously reading Twitter while I'm talking. But I can pick all of that up later, and that's my website, lornajane.net. So that was me. This is PHP 5.4. With a new version of PHP, it's actually been a while since we released 5.3. So 5.4, was it going to be 5.4? Was it going to be PHP 6 or PHP 7? There was some delay in actually getting 5.4 out. That said, it's here now. It's awesome. It's stable. We had something insane, like 17 released candidates for 5.4.0. I'm sure we just normally release 2 and then ship it. So 5.4 was probably the first time in living memory, as far as I'm concerned, that you would want to run a .0 release of PHP in production. In 5.4, you could have done that. Trust me, 5.3.0, So it's come a long way. There are some new features. Traits seems to be the headline news, so I'll talk about it. The built-in web server is the one I love the most. We have some new array syntax, which I'll show you, and some other kind of OOP, anonymous functions type features. Really neat little tricks that you might actually like to use. We've removed some nonsense. There are some really daft things that are in PHP for historical reasons, and a bunch of those are now gone. And since I entitled my talk, the PHP 5.4 features you will actually use, I basically get to choose what goes into the talk. So these are the best bits in my very subjective opinion. I'll start with the very easiest of the features, and that's our new array syntax. We have new array syntax because we didn't have enough array syntaxes already. At one time in my life, I taught PHP to complete beginners, and the multiple ways of declaring and adding elements to arrays floored them all. So we've added in another one. Yay! So you can do this with or without keys. Or you can do this with or without keys. And in PHP 5.4 and onwards, you can now do this. So instead of the array keyword with the round brackets, forget that, wrap it in square brackets as well. It's kind of JSON-esque without actually being valid JSON, because we still have our array operators in here. So you would still do comma-separated key-value pairs, exactly as you would in the array structure, but we've just got the short square brackets. Just a tiny... I thought this was irrelevant when I first saw it, but I find I actually do use it. It's just a really quick way of instantiating an array. You'll see it again later. So that's new array syntax. We've also got array dereferencing. I'm not a huge fan, but I'll show you anyway. Here's a function that returns an array. Short array syntax. It's cute. So we get the list, and as of 5.4, you can make the call to get list and immediately access one of the elements in that array. So you can immediately dereference it. So if you've got something which returns you a collection and you only want one thing, you can grab it in one line. I am not necessarily sure that you always should. Starting to look a little bit code golf, but it's there if you want it. You can see there that when we echo the item, we get the first item out of this list. New feature in PHP 5.4. Here's a feature that you can't avoid using. PHP 5.4 is faster. If you take your existing PHP 5.3 code, upgrade your server to PHP 5.4 and run it, without using any of the shiny new features at all, your code will run faster. How much faster? Well, of course, the answer is it depends. But I did have a shot at quantifying this for you. Now, my first attempt, I'll tell you the story anyway. I'm not an expert in benchmarking. I tend to do, you know, like one script, put it on a web server. Sometimes lots of people access it, but I'm not dealing with high availability sites. My benchmarking skills were limited. So I had this great idea. Okay, so I'm going to write a PHP script, going to run it lots of times. We'll do that on PHP 5.3. We'll do it on 5.4. We'll measure the difference. Okay, benchmarking. Awesome. So I did that, and I proved scientifically that PHP 5.4 is twice as fast as PHP 5.3. It isn't. So I pinged the core developers and said, hey, I proved that PHP 5.4 is twice as fast as PHP 5.3. And they said, it isn't. So I showed them the benchmark that I had picked. And basically, I'd done a lot of object-related maneuvers in that. The whole script is on my blog if you're interested. And one of the main improvements in 5.4 is that they have really worked on the performance of instantiating new objects and the garbage collection and so on. So I had basically picked the best possible benchmark for PHP 5.4. So it's not twice as fast, but it is faster. After I blogged this whole, hey, it's twice as fast, someone told me how to actually benchmark PHP. I love the internet, it's great. You blog what you've done and someone tells you why you're wrong. And then if I had never written that article, I would never have learned, actually, there's this bench.php script included in the PHP source tree. Aha, now we're cooking on gas. So I took this bench.php, I downloaded the most recent source code. At the time, this was about 8 weeks ago, we've had new releases of 5.3 and 5.4 since then. Of 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and 5.4, and I compiled them all. I didn't install them on my system, I just compiled them. Each of them has a bench.php in it. I have a rather average laptop, Exhibit A. And I just did each of that, ran the bench.php with its relevant version of PHP 10 times, because if there's something running in the background, I don't want to screw my results. Put it all in a spreadsheet and averaged it. Again, full results on my blog if you want it. So that gave me how long it takes to run that script under each of those 4 versions of PHP. I don't have 5.0 because I didn't have a benchmark script. The 5.1 benchmark script didn't work, and like, who's using 5.0? So never mind. This is 5.1. If you run the bench script under 5.1, it averaged out for me just a little bit under 4 seconds. Okay, cool, excellent. The absolute times don't really matter. It's not a particularly powerful machine. It wasn't a particularly scientific test. But I think in terms of relative speed, these are valid results. This is 5.2. It's a tiny shade slower. At which point I went, I think I'm doing it wrong. So I had a look at the benchmarks that we released around the time 5.2 was released and the time that 5.3 was released. This is consistent. 5.2 had way more features, cool SPL stuff, filter, date time. It wasn't particularly faster. 5.3, hello. Hopefully you're all on 5.3. If not, you might want to go there. Hey, this is 5.3. It's quite a lot faster. Now I knew that 5.3 had been quite a lot faster. At the time we did the release, there was lots of talk about the garbage collector and so on. I'm not an internals developer. I just complain when things are broken in PHP and other people fix them. So I just I don't even read internals. People just tell me if anything important happens. Right, 5.3, they told me it was faster. 5.4, we didn't really talk about performance. So anyway, yeah, it's faster. And the speed up is mostly in that heavy OOP area of things, in creating new objects, in improved garbage collection, in the way that it handles references and identifies circular references. That's where the speed-ups come from in PHP 5.4. So here is a PHP 5.4 feature you cannot avoid. Take your 5.3 code, run it on a 5.4 system, and both in raw speed and anecdotally in memory usage, you will see an improvement. So you'll get more mileage out of your existing hardware. I will talk about upgrade paths as well towards the end. All right, let's talk about traits. Traits seem to be the new shiny in PHP 5.3. They're a nice tool. I'm a consultant. So if your code is full of traits, anonymous functions, gratuitous use of magic methods, you've read the whole design patterns book and applied them all at once, I just get incrementally more expensive when each of these things occur in your code that you would like me to look at. Traits belongs in that kind of compartment. It's an awesome tool when you're using it to solve the right problem, and the rest of the time it's a hazard. Okay, so here's the cool thing. PHP has single inheritance. So when we declare a class, our class can only have one parent, single inheritance. Some languages have multiple inheritance, PHP doesn't. And we do things like our entirely unrelated classes in our hierarchy end up with a common parent so that everything knows how to log itself. Some other kind of arbitrary shared functionality. Traits solve that problem. They are compiler-assisted copy and paste of methods. So you can take a method or a bunch of methods, and when you want to copy and paste them between classes, okay, if the classes are related, you put them in a common parent. If they're completely unrelated, you can't. Traits allows you to put those methods in a trait and just say, this class, and everything inheriting from this needs these methods or this method. So you can sort of spot apply functionality, but it's maintained in one place. That's traits. You declare a trait. It looks like a class. So it's got a name, it's got methods, it can have properties. Then, inside your class that you want to apply it to, use the use keyword, give the name of the trait, the methods in the trait appear in your class. Everything's good. So here's my example. I have an audit trait. My audit trait has a method getAuditTrail. Who put trait and trail in the same slide? I don't know. So I've got this method in this trait. Here's my princess class. Okay? So I have this princess, and it uses the audit trait. There's some other functionality here. It didn't fit on my slide. So we instantiate a new princess. Mine is called Daisy. And we can then call this getAuditTrail method on the Daisy object. Okay? Because it's in the trait, and we use the trait here. So this method just arrives, is immediately available to us. Kind of a neat trick, right? You can imagine a series of situations where this is going to go wrong. Two traits are called the same thing, two methods are called the same thing, you inherit a method, declare a method, and get it from a trait, and they're all called the same thing. Okay, we've thought of all that stuff. There are rules for resolving the clashes, and you can alias things, so you can just give it a different name if you want to be able to access it. I could show you 50 code examples, but you won't remember. Trust me, it's under control. Look it up if you have those problems. Traits can include properties. So if the method or methods that you want to apply need a property for some reason, you can put that in the trait as well. You can also have abstract methods. So that sort of interfaces, abstract classes, traits belongs in that kind of zone with things that you can use fleshed out, or you can just prototype in the trait. It's abstract, so any class which uses the trait then has to implement that method. Traits can build on traits. So you can have a trait that might be used in a couple of places, but if you need a trait that will always be used with this one, you can just build on it. So your new trait uses the previous one, and you can apply the composite trait onto your classes. So that's traits. It probably more likely something you would use at framework or library level than necessarily in userland code. Yes?
So why go to all this trouble? I mean, it sounds like they're creating multiple inheritance, but why call it traits? Why is it this way? It just looks like they actually kind of got there, but went with this.
Yeah, no,
a different name.
No, it isn't true multiple inheritance. So rather than implement half-baked multiple inheritance, we have classes, abstract classes, interfaces, and traits.
Okay.
So this is, I mean, it's just a method compiler-assisted copy-paste. Okay. It's not true multiple inheritance. I like the question. Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes up for a lot of the times you probably would use multiple inheritance in other languages.
Right, well, like using interfaces, right, with your abstract languages.
Yeah.
Right, so
It looks a lot like it. It solves a lot of the same problems, but it isn't multiple inheritance. I got another question, Brett.
Something that maybe we can expand on.
Oh dear.
If you're using something that's a trait
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else, but you need it to be, you need that feature plus more.
Yes.
You need it to be, say you're doing a format, a date format.
Yeah.
You have that as a trait that is able to do that, but you need it to support other parameters that are not part of that common trait. Is that what you're talking about when you say you can expand on it?
So you can have traits which use other traits. So if you have a trait and you want to make another trait which uses these traits methods, this trait can use the first trait. So they can kind of, like the methods in here, you can kind of just include them in here by automatically and then build on it and then apply that if you want. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. Can abstract classes have traits assigned to them? I can't see why not, because you can mark a totally functioning class as abstract. So yeah, I guess. Awesome. Okay. I love PHP OOP, isn't that lucky? Right. The built-in web server. So the situation goes that a lot of the scripting languages have built-in web servers. And I think Ruby has one, Python has one. Okay, that's lovely. That's nice. The built-in web server is fabulous. Since I started looking at it, I've used it so much. Who knew we needed a built-in web server? Oh my God, we needed a built-in web server. So we have this really lightweight web server, which is part of the PHP command line functionality in PHP 5.4. It's very simple. It's very lightweight. It's for development use only. Seriously, it is for development use only. I have a war story to tell you in 2 slides' time. Or maybe a bit more than that. I've got some examples first. Requests are served sequentially. So think of this. You've got a web server. It gets a request. It processes that request. This may take some time. When it's finished processing that request, then it has a look what else might have arrived in the meantime. Okay? Development use only. Requests are served sequentially. I copied and pasted this from the manual and I linked to it. Development use only. Okay. So it's very straightforward and it's awesome for development. I'm using it a lot now. PHP on the command line, PHP-S, name of server, port number. Now I can't default to port 80, that machine runs Apache, so I've already got stuff going on port 80. So I'm using 8080. The higher numbers mean you don't need root access. Any of your other platforms I couldn't comment on. This is a standard LAMP stack. As soon as you do this, you can run this in your browser and your scripts will get served. There we go. That was easier than configuring any web server. In the command prompt where you ran this is the output that you see. So you can see I'm hitting a couple of different little toy PHP scripts. My browser is very determined that it needs a fav icon. I haven't got a fav icon, so you can see that the scripts are fine with 200s, but I've got some 400s as well, because the browser's requesting the fav icon, I don't have it. There's a bunch of other things you can do with this. Hopefully this isn't too many examples. You can give it whatever server name, domain name you want. I tend to have .local to clue me in that this isn't the internet, this is mine. But, you know, everyone has their own conventions. You can literally invent the name of domain. As long as you put the same domain in your hosts file, you can just make web requests to it. So can anyone else in your network. So you can fire this up on like a shared server or even on your machine in the office, as long as other people are on VPN to you or in the office, same network. If they can reach your IP, put this in your hosts file, they can start using it as well. So it's a very quick way just to put up an example. I've used it as an easy way to show clients, you know, little PHP tools they might like to install. Hey, I've heard of this cool thing called DocuWiki. Oh, we don't have PHP installed. I mean, who doesn't have PHP installed? But anyway, you can do this. Some other cool things, it takes an argument for the doc root. So if you're running this command from somewhere which isn't where the files are, for example, if you've got it running under supervisor D, something which is going to bring it up if it dies, you can give a switch for the doc root. You can specify which php.ini to use. PHP ships with a couple of example php.ini files, the development one, the production one. If you don't add this argument, the web server uses PHP's kind of bare metal defaults, which is a little bit weird. So I'd recommend using the INI files because it's the way that we normally use PHP. Okay, one more thing. The routing file. Now that link goes to a PHP mailing list post from which I stole all of this code, which is, again, the wonders of the internet. If basically this does the thing that you put in htaccess, which says, if this isn't a file and it isn't a directory, rewrite the request to index.php. Okay, so those 3 lines that you will always put in your htaccess file, this is the same thing in PHP. So when you run the web server, PHP -s, right, whatever port and server name you want, and this additional argument, the routing file. So the routing file can kick in and do your rewrites for your pretty URLs or any extra rules that you need. So it has that set up. And I think we'll see more and more of the various open source projects shipping with this as well as htaccess, so that you can just quickly fire up the web server and see it working immediately. So I think that's pretty cool.
So while this command is running, every request that comes in,
Yeah.
you run this first.
Yeah, it's almost like an auto prepend. It's like, do you want a file or shall I route you off into some PHP? Like, what's going on here? So that's quite a nice little sort of preamble. Yeah. Not as far as I know. As I say, I stole this off the PHP mailing list. I've seen a couple of examples like this, so if you see a file called routing.php, I'm guessing, but it's not widespread enough yet.
So it's like a middleware, right?
Yeah.
And you could actually put function in there.
Yeah. I think this will pair up really nicely with the far stuff, which is also awesome that no one's using. Like, this gives us, this with the command line web server, gives us, here, try my product. Really nicely, and we can do a lot of the setup, a lot of the config. So I can see this growing. Jose.
So that PHP 2.3 has a new console that will start a server for you with the correct routing path.
Can I say that again? It's awesome. Cake PHP 2.3 has a command line tool which will allow you to start the server with the correct arguments and a routing file that works. There we are, taking advantages of the new features. Okay, another new feature. This is like a list of features. There's no structure to this talk. It's like, here's 5 things Lorna liked. Here's something that I really liked. If you're managing users uploading files through a web interface, sometimes this can take a little bit of time. And your user has no faith and thinks your site's broken and goes away in the middle. It's deeply annoying. So, as of PHP 5.4, built into PHP, and there were other ways to do it before, but built into PHP 5.4, is this way of monitoring how your upload is going. Because as the file uploads, it writes to the session how far through it is. So you can then write another script that says, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Repeatedly, by interrogating the session. So you can kind of track the uploads, give some feedback in some way. How about an HTML5 progress bar? Nearly all of the tutorials for this on the web have this as their examples. You can upload a file and see it kind of coming through. It's quite nice. So it's 2 separate scripts. Your first one looks like you would expect it to look. It's a form. It's a multi-part form. It's got a file input type. Okay? Not rocket science. It also has this hidden field, and its name will be upload progress, or whatever your upload progress.name php.ini variable is set to. The default is upload progress, so you know. So you do this, user picks their file, they press go. Your script obviously is processing the upload, and you have some client-side script which is going to hit a separate PHP script and interrogate the session. This is what you've got in the session. Upload progress, whatever the unique identifier is. I skipped that horribly. You need to give this a unique value so that you can link back to which upload it is. Let's try that again. Here it is, with suffixed with the unique identifier that you gave it, so you can tell which upload this is, when it started, how big it is, how far through we are, and so on. I stole most of this from this link here, so you can jump in there to see like more working code than would fit on a slide. There are some obvious fails with trying to test this locally. First of all, you need the reflex times of some kind of improbable robot to be able to upload in one screen and check it in another screen. Secondly, requests are served sequentially. So until you've finished processing the upload file, your web server is not going to listen to your demands to know how the upload is going. Okay, so you can instantly see how I fell into this trap and told you 30 times that you're not to use it other than in development. I worked around this in 2 ways. One, uploaded a gigantic file. So that gave me enough time, even on localhost, for it to be still writing to disk and I could see how the upload was going. Secondly, started another PHP command line web server on a different port. My browser is hitting the same domain, it's sending the same cookies, I've got the same session identifier. So on port 8080, we're uploading a file, and on port 8081, my JavaScript is hitting it repeatedly to see how my session is getting on. So that's how I worked around that. You could do it. Sorry? Yeah, I needed to trickle it through. I don't have Charles installed on this. I was like, I need some kind of trickle proxy. Oh wait, I'll just upload a VM. Done. Okay, problem solved. Fixed. Yeah. So because I was doing all of these examples on PHP 5.4, my platforms are not all 5.4 yet, so I don't have 5.4 on that machine by default. I was like, oh, that's great. We've got a web server. I'll just test it. Yeah. So only use it in development, and even then look out for weird pitfalls like this. No concurrent requests. All right. Let's take another little foray off into the world of OOP. Not all of these features are new in 5.4, but it's useful to know about them in 5.3. In case someone hasn't used them, I got some examples. Anonymous functions, the invoke magic method, those are both in 5.3. And the callable type hint, that's in 5.4. So we have type hinting in PHP. We can type hint on a class name. If the object is of that class or descended from that class, it passes the type hint. Interfaces. If the object implements that interface or it descends from something which implements that interface, it passes the type hint. We could type hint on arrays, so if you pass in an array, everything's good. As of 5.4, we can type hint on callable. So, callable is anything where the isCallable function would return you true, right? There's basically an isCallable wrapped into a type hint. This has been implemented because we were seeing, PHP core development team that do the work, I don't do the work, I just talk about it. We were seeing people type hinting with closure as a type. Now, anonymous functions are closures internally as an object class type, but it's just an implementation detail, right? So the PHP core community did not want us using closure all over our userland code, because that's their detail, not ours. So they made us this callable type hint, and it's actually even more cool than implementing a closure type hint. Anything which can be called. Closures, obviously. Callbacks. So the name of a function, an object and method name, a class name and method name, or an anonymous function will all work here. Or an invocable object. I have an example of this as well. So, first of all, recap, anonymous functions are literally functions without a name. You either declare them where you want them, something like array walk. If you need to write a function to use with array walk or like the preg replace, something like that, great, but you only want to use it once. If you put it in your global namespace, then you're polluting your global namespace, but also somebody else might call it by mistake, so that's never going to work well. The anonymous functions, we just use them once, throw them away, or we can pass them around as arguments to functions. It's quite fabulous. Here, I have a very simple function. We declare it function, no name. And then the parameters list, which in this case really wasn't very long, so it's not a good example. The function does whatever it does. I'm suffering badly from the completely inconsequential code in order to fit on a slide. Problem, this echoes ping. So here, we've got our function, we assign it to a variable ping, and here we can do this, looks a bit strange, $ping, bracket. Okay? PHP will resolve this to, oh, it's a function, and then it'll call the function with any parameters that we give. Anonymous functions, new feature in 5.3, so you've probably seen it already. With the callable type hint, this all starts to get a bit more interesting. The first code block is my sparkles function. It type hints callable. So it only accepts things which are callable into the sparkles function. Again, it's not particularly interesting function. It calls the function it's given and then it gives us a little bit of output. Here's my ping function again. Here's $pong, it's just the string pong. Echo sparkles, $ping. So I'm calling sparkles, I'm passing in this anonymous function. Okay? Anonymous function, callable, wonderful. So this method calls the function, returns fairy dust. We echo it, everything's good. Good. Sparkles, pass in $pong. $pong is a string, pong. Critically, there is no function declared with the name pong. If there was, this would behave quite differently. There isn't. So the type hint fails and we get this fatal error because it's not callable. If I declared a function called pong, this would be totally acceptable and PHP would call it because it's a valid callback. So that's your callable type hint. I was muttering about invocable objects, so here it is. I have a butterfly class with this magic method __ invoke. The magic methods are magic because you don't call them yourself. PHP calls them in response to a specific event. __ invoke gets called when the object is used as a function. Okay? This was new in 5.3, but it's more interesting now because we have the callable type hint. We instantiate a new butterfly class. It's called $b. We pass $b into our sparkles function. The sparkles function expects a callable. Instead of passing an anonymous function, we've passed an object, but the object has the __ invoke method. So it's acceptable as a callable object. We call the function, we call the object as a function, this gets called, then we return fairy dust and echo it, and you get that. Wow. I like the callable type hint. You'll see it for all kinds of bits and pieces. As you're doing various design patterns and passing around bits of functionality, strategy pattern, injecting behaviors, this will come into play more and more. If you have code that uses the closure type hint, please just literally find and replace when you go to 5.4. Any questions? Yes? I assume so. Yeah, okay. 5.4 has the bind too, so you can rebind closures onto different objects. This doesn't seem like something that my brain really computes, so it's not in my slides, because I don't want to encourage anyone to use it, because then I might have to fix it. Yeah. So yeah, we have cool bind to stuff. There were some other quite big changes in 5.4, which are completely inconsequential unless you've had the problem. For example, they, in my opinion, fixed how the scope of $this works when you bake it into a closure, which is always a little bit weird in 5.3, and 5.4 now behaves in a more predictable way. So yeah, there's a lot of those things that got fixed. I don't know about the closure class. I don't think they made many changes. I know that they did this, but it's not really, it's extra. Okay, this is the most hard going of everything. After this, it gets way more fun. JSON serializable. This is fun. So we have a new interface. In PHP 5.4, it's JSON serializable. Let me give you the backstory first. We have magic methods __ sleep and __ wake up, which get called automatically when we serialize objects. No one seems to serialize objects anymore. It's terribly out of fashion. Everyone JSONs them. I will use JSON as a verb. If I wish, it's my talk. Serialize is actually quite a cool format if you're working between multiple PHP platforms or if you're storing something for the same application to pick up later, because it's got data format information in there as well. So serialize, you know it was a number or a string, you know if it was an array or an object. It's just a little bit less easygoing than JSON. Everyone uses JSON for interoperability. These features are really cool for serialization. I have implemented similar features 100 times for JSON. So I'm very pleased to see this interface. I do quite a lot of API work, so I output more JSON than I do HTML, just because that's the kind of thing that I do. The irony of giving this talk while the rest talk is in the other track is not lost on me. Okay, so the JSON serializable interface has a single method called JSON serialize. And basically, when you JSON encode an object, this gets called. Whatever data you return from that method is what will get encoded. So you can add, remove, or reformat anything you want. This is your opportunity. Here's a very contrived example. It was more impressive, but it predictably didn't fit. And I've learned my lesson about shrinking font sizes. It never works. Have a garden object, it implements JSON serializable. Because it implements JSON serializable, it has a JSON serialize method. Okay? Everybody is still with me. We instantiate a garden object, we add flowers, herbs, and fruit. This gets giggles everywhere else because it's very English. In Manchester, it probably doesn't seem that weird. When I JSON encode my garden, we call this. I'm actually unsetting something in $this and then returning $this, but you could build a new data structure here if you wanted. So when you see the output, you can see that only the flowers and the fruit actually got serialized. So it's a bit like countable. Like you can just implement it, you implement count, and you count the object, the thing gets called. Same kind of idea, but it happens when we JSON encode it. So that's quite cute. Okay. Things which are gone. I saw an article that Rasmus wrote, which he actually used the phrase, we finally pulled the trigger on things that should never have been in a language. I'm going to press the button and show you the list, and I hope that none of you have ever used any of these things. Basically, that's how long they've been gone for. Register globals. Okay. Who's ever coded with register globals on? That's the way I like it. It was recommended off in 4.2, PHP 4.2. It was off by default in PHP 4.3. Okay, people, that's 2001. Okay? We knew it was bad. We turned it off by default. It's still in the language. 5.4, it's gone. Register long arrays. If you have code that has like HTTP_post_vars as a variable, right, it's $_post. Just do a find and replace. That's gone. Safe mode was never particularly safe. That's gone. Magic quotes. This one was quite controversial, but if you're relying on magic quotes to keep you safe on the internet, you have bigger problems. So I have no objection to this being gone. Allow call time passed by reference. So once upon a time, when you called a function, you could just kind of stick an ampersand in front of the variable, and instead of copying the value into the function, it would use it as a reference. And the function didn't know this was happening. This clearly makes no sense, because your function needs to know if it needs to return the value or not. Like, the function either operates on a reference, or it doesn't. So this has been off by default. You could turn it on to keep your old code working for backwards compatibility reasons. It's gone. I think it's good news. The only thing I'm sad about is I really like to be able to put the ampersand in the call as well, so that when you're reading the code and the function you're calling is off in a library somewhere, it's really obvious that it's a reference and something's going to operate on this variable. You're not allowed to have the ampersand there in the call now. It must be in the function declaration. Fine. You're not allowed to have it in the call. I would have liked to have had it. I end up just commenting. Y2K compliance. It never did anything. We had to tell Enterprise that we were Y2K compliant, so we had Y2K compliance on switch to php.ini in 1999. It was still, we don't need it, it's gone. It never did anything. We were always Y2K compliant. But I don't know, people needed audits and things. Lots of people got paid to write reports in 1999. I wasn't working in the industry at the time, so okay, good. I once saw a core developer go on stage, talk about this, and then say, hey, I think we should have a go faster flag. What do you think? You know, and it's like, my PHP is slow. Have you enabled the go faster flag? Yeah. The ereg functions are gone. We've been talking about this for a long time. They've been deprecated, lots of warnings. They're actually gone now. So if you have regular expressions which use the ereg stuff, you need to convert them over to use the Perl compatible ones. So all of this stuff is gone in 5.4. None of it is anything I'll miss. None of it is anything you've probably used. And I think it's really healthy that we're kind of cutting out the dead wood and throwing things away. This is a good thing. It was done in a very controlled way. when you upgrade to 5.4, your upgrade path will be the best it's ever been, basically. There aren't a lot of backwards compatible breaking changes in 5.4 other than removing all this stuff which is recommended to not be there. 5.2 to 5.3, we went 3 years between releases. There was nearly PHP 6, then we backported loads of stuff into 5.3, and it was very active. So there was a bit of a step between 5.2 and 5.3. Things did change. Going to 5.4, not that much changes. Your code is very likely to just work. On a 5.3 platform, enable this e-deprecated error warning level. This is why the integer warnings change. We have to have constants, because we're always introducing new stuff. Turn on the e-deprecated stuff, because that will flag anything which is in 5.3, which won't be in 5.4. So your application can tell you which bit of it is going to drop off when you put it on a new platform. So it's been very well planned, and only because we introduced the e-deprecated can we now turn off all that php.ini stuff. So you may have to edit your inis when you upgrade, which we don't always do. So look out for that. We can also test the PHP 5.4 web server. So you can just kind of throw your code into the new web server and see how it gets on without ever installing it for real on a machine. You know, those days of, well, let's try it on a virtual machine. Well, let's put it, let's try it on the test box. Well, let's take one of the web heads out of the cluster and see how it goes. You know, none of that. You can just try it on the web server as a really quick, is it all going to work or is it not going to work at all? Really quick metric. Okay, let's get on for lunchtime. So, PHP 5.4, good news as far as I'm concerned. Did I mention it's faster? I love my graph, and it really is faster. Like, I didn't know it was faster, and it is. So that's the fact that the core community kind of sat down and invested time and effort into just cleaning things up and making everything just a little bit better again. And there were internal changes. We had to have a new release for xdebug because of the internal changes for 5.4. So, you know, for me, this is everything that symbolizes the progress in the language. The features I'll actually use: the short array syntax, definitely. The traits, once a year. The built-in web server, constantly. Like, I write books and training courses and fix code for other people, and you can imagine I have an infinite number of directories called sample code lying about on my hard drive. So instead of needing an infinite number of symlinks into my web root or lots and lots of virtual hosts, just kind of pop the web server up and then sort of put it away again. It's marvelous. So I'm using the web server absolutely loads. The upload progress, I would like to use. I don't write a lot of websites. I do APIs and back-end server-side stuff. I really don't write any HTML. But if I did, the upload progress would make a big difference. Callable type hint, that's useful. JSON serialize, I know exactly where I'm implementing that as soon as I can upgrade their live platform. This one I'm desperate to get into. So, those are the features I will actually use. I've shown you kind of the best of what I think is new in 5.4. Any questions before I wrap up? Yeah. I think that's fatal now. I don't know. Try it. But I think that's fatal now. I don't think it's just scattering warnings. I think it's like, no, seriously, don't do that. Yeah. Any more questions? It's really hot in here. Yeah. Future roadmap. Ooh. Okay, look, I'm not in the core development community, so I could start rumors, and I know what I think will happen, but I can't really drop any meaningful hints. We've kind of abandoned the Unicode thing. The multi-byte libraries get better all the time, so there's workarounds for pretty much anything. PHP is big in Japan, as far as I know. I can't see that. It's going to be very politically difficult to release a PHP 6, because all the books that came out in 2005, like, keep saying to the core developers, I hope you've read all those PHP 6 books. So I don't know. I don't know what's coming. There's talk of a 5.5. We now have an RFC process, so putting new things into the language is more democratic and less drunk in the bar at a conference, because, you know, we never got drunk and deleted the PHP 6 trunk at a conference. So it's becoming more professional. There'll be a more regular release cycle. Rasmus is taking more of an interest. We've got the sort of more... We haven't got more contributors at all. We have some new coming on, not many. The old guard that like to fit features in the bar because it seems like a good idea are less active. They also get headhunted, start startups, start families, and generally disappear. That's what happens to open source. I think we will see probably a rocky few years just because there aren't a lot of contributors. We do have new process. There's a lot of uncertainty about PHP 6. So expect some storming before any more performing. Yeah? I have no insight. I've seen a really good argument between two very well-qualified German guys at a conference. I am not in favour of primitive type hinting because I think it makes no sense in a weakly dynamically typed language. Like, this is an integer. It's not an integer, it's a string. Well, do you want to pretend it's an integer, or should it really be an integer? This makes no sense to me. Yeah, absolutely. It's here to solve the web problem. We lob data over mobile networks in JSON format. Everything's awesome. You know, if you need high accuracy and you're going to use verbose XML, you probably want Java. I mean, yeah. I've heard the arguments on both sides. It makes no sense to me to fit it. I'm not a core contributor. Does that mean I'll get it? Don't know. Hard to say. Mark?
Just around the RFC thing, I talked with Peter Joy, who's one of the internal guys last week, and the sense I get is that with this new RFC thing, it's actually, I think they really want to bring more people into it, right? If you're a C developer and you're interested in helping to contribute, I think now is a good time to really get on board and get involved with it, right? And particularly since you guys are obviously mainline users of it, right? There's an opportunity there to really contribute to not just the process and the features and things you want to see, but also to actually go and do some work and contribute to it as well. So anyway, just wanted to throw it in there. I think it's stormy in some ways.
It's stormy in some ways. The internals mailing list is a hellhole full of complete dicks. They are mostly not the people that contribute to the language. The people who contribute to the language are intelligent and reasonable people. They're good to be involved with if you can hear them over the noise. I'm not going to say anything else about that. Like, if you want to talk to me about internals, ask me over a beer. All of the links that I throw in saying, hey, here's how you do this, but I stole it from here. Here's how to do that, I stole it from there. All of the links are in a bit.ly bundle. You can find them there. Please go here and leave me some feedback on my talk. All of the talks that you will see today and tomorrow are on Joined In. It is a conference feedback site. Please register. Please leave feedback for the speakers that you see. If you hate it, come and tell me. It's written in PHP. I'm the project lead. Okay? My slides are linked from this page, or they will be when I get enough internet connection. My slides are linked from this page, so if you want them, you can get them when you go and leave me some feedback. Okay? Thanks very much.